Thank you for the wonderful film. You are from Boston, right? Is that right?
I'm originally from Boston, and 2 years ago I moved to Austin, Texas.
Okay.
So I started working on the project with Will about 5 months after his illness and his amputations while I was still living in Boston, and then finished it just flying back.
Okay, fantastic. I'm curious, did you know Will personally ahead of time, or how did you make the connection?
So Will and I were both graduate students at Boston University's film program, and he went out to Montana to take this really great job. 2 days into the job, that all happened to him, and a professor that we both knew had told me about Will, and I was working for Boston University at the time for their alumni magazine and their news website, and started working on a short piece for the BU community just to let people know what had happened. And then before I decided I was going to move to Texas, I asked Will if we could work on a longer piece that we could get out to festivals, and he was really interested in it. He's a filmmaker himself, so being part of that creative process, I think, was a joy to him, just to have something interesting to do while he was going through rehab, and to get his story out. He's an educator as a professor of film, and so to be able to educate people about his story was also really important to him.
One thing that was interesting to me is because coming in, my expectation was, with the picture and the synopsis was about we're going to see this guy and he does stand up and so on. And what surprised me was finding his journey of recovery his journey through physio and through all that. You followed him for how long?
Yeah, so he had the infection in September of 2011, and I started working with him in February 2012. And I'm actually still working with Will. So he had, we updated the card for the film to let people know that he had an experimental procedure, a double arm transplantation. So we're actually continuing to work together on a feature documentary about that journey and about that restorative surgery. The Brigham and Women's Hospital that perform the surgery, they have this world-class team that's doing the face transplants and arm transplants. And Will is only their second patient to undergo this procedure successfully at that hospital. So it's still really new. But the hospital has this rich history. They did the first human organ transplant in 1954, and Joseph Murray, the doctor there, won the Nobel Prize for it. So it's got this really rich history in terms of transplantation surgery that we'll be weaving through the film and showing Will's personal story and narrative.
Wow, fantastic. Yeah. And will you include some of this footage in the feature version?
Yeah. We're expanding this. Yeah, we're expanding this into a feature. You'll see how his comedy evolves, and really what we didn't include that'll be important part of the feature are the personal relationships in his lives too. His partner Angel appears in the short, but really isn't interviewed for it, and he's going to be a bigger character in the feature because having a romantic relationship with someone and having that happen to your partner, it affects your life as well. So, yeah, I think
there's certainly a lot more to be explored, and I found myself wanting to see more, wanting more. That's a good thing.
Thank you.
Quick question about yourself. What is your background as a filmmaker?
Well, I studied film in Boston, and I worked for a small company for a little bit, and then BU recruited me, so I worked for Boston University for about 5.5 years as a shooter-editor. So I was directing, producing, shooting, and editing short docs for them, and now I own a company, and I do freelance work. So working on this mainly full-time and writing for grants and all that fun stuff. We're in production, and hopefully we'll get that out and distribute it in 2017. We've got about a year left of production and editing, but I do some freelance work too. So my most recent pieces were for the Mental Health Channel, which is run by Arcos Films in Austin, and that's free content. It's great if you want to check it out. Mental Health Channel online. It's all free.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you edit this as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, you did. Okay.
Yeah. A little bit of everything. When you don't have money,
yes.
you have to do it all.
I know the story well. I'm going to open up the floor to questions. Anybody have any questions for Robin?
Yeah, absolutely. So Will says that what he likes to say is that surgeons have told him that it's idiopathic, and which means like we have no idea how you contracted this bacterial infection. They don't know where the entry point was and how he actually contracted the bacteria, but the strain of bacteria is called Group A strep. And you've probably heard of necrotizing fasciitis. It's like a flesh-eating bacteria. So Will's twin brother was explaining a little bit about it. This bacteria, when it gets into your bloodstream, if you take antibiotics to kill the bacteria, that's a good thing, right? Because the bacteria die, but then it's also horrible because the bacteria, when they die, they release these toxins, and it's the toxins that then start to kill your tissues. So it was just a certain kind of bacteria. Doctors have no idea actually how it got into his body and affected him the way it does. We actually all have Group A strep on us. It's just very rare that will affect someone that way. It's very common in the environment. So I think that these are things that, you know, people, researchers are still studying and trying to figure out. Yeah.
Anyone else? I see a hand right there in the middle.
To build off the last question, the randomness of this, does Will struggle with the almost like kind of like smiting aspect of like how random this whole thing is? And because that's what's so interesting to me is like this guy has this horrible thing happen to him, but he's able to in many ways stay positive. I'm interested in his like coping mechanisms and stuff.
I don't know how he does it, really. I mean, if you try to put yourself in his shoes, it is completely life-changing. And without arms, he's really dependent on other people. And even now with arms, the nerves are going to take a long time to grow from his own forearms into the donor arms for him to actually be able to use them. Somehow he's able to stay really positive. And I think that's a testament to his will and his strong character and his outlook on life, but I think he also has a really great support system. So, you know, at the end you saw the picture with Will and his partner Angel. Angel is a really great person in terms of, you know, making Will stay positive as well, and saying like, don't get there to that dark place. That's like, they often talk about that, you know, you can grieve, and that's part of the healing process, and you know, everyone deserves to grieve when they go through difficult times and when they try to overcome adversity. But I think staying positive is really helpful, and I think keeps him motivated to, you know, continue with rehab and looking forward to his future.
Okay. Any more questions? Got one there, and then we'll move on to the next film after this one.
Do you think he would have found that outlet had not this happened to him? Did he have any interest before that?
Oh, the comedy.
The comedy?
Yeah. So the comedy, how it evolved was that when I was filming with Will in rehab real early on, I noticed he was making these really dark jokes and to the nurses and to family and friends. And I think that it was his way of breaking the ice. You know, I think it can be really intimidating if you have a loved one, a friend, you visit them in the hospital and they have no arms and legs. It's like, what do I say? And so I think intuitively he felt, you know, that humor was a way to bring people together. And so I noticed this, and I had encouraged him to make this a part of the film. I actually have a friend who's a stand-up comedian and started in Boston, is in New York, and has a lot of friends that are still in different venues. And he set us up with a time slot at Improv Boston. So Will just worked on his material actually while he was learning how to walk. He had a lot of free time. So he would just run the jokes by the nurses, and really, like, I think did a great job in terms of crafting that sketch. And that was his very first performance. Wow. So he's done it a few other times, probably 7 or 8 more shows, because there was someone at the theater who saw Will's show and is a comedian and invited Will to perform with him, and his name is Steve Delfino. So they did a lot of sketches together after that at Improv Boston. But he always had this feeling, actually, before the surgery and like as it was coming up, that he wasn't sure if how comfortable he would feel doing comedy after the surgery, and he's still not sure how he's going to work that out. He jokes that by gaining new arms, he's lost half of his best material, because when you go to a show and you see a guy without arms and legs, it's pretty funny. But with arms, he's like, I'm not sure how funny I am now. I think he also has to try to balance out reconciling his thoughts about these new arms and the respect that he has for the donor and the memory of the donor, and he doesn't want to disrespect that in any way. So he's struggling a little bit. He's at a point now where he's sort of put that on hold, and he's actually doing rehab full time. He's in rehab 3 days a week. It was 5 days a week, because they're making sure that there are no signs of rejection on the arms and doing a lot of exercises. So that takes a lot of energy out of Will. But we hope that he'll return to the stage, because he's pretty funny and he really enjoys it.
Well, hopefully he'll, once he gets past the rehab, can kind of refocus on that. I can
Yeah.
see where that's
I hope
probably
so.
a lot of his time and energy right now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Robin, for coming to Victoria with your wonderful film, and we're all looking forward to the future.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it, and you guys have been so warm and hospitable. Thanks for inviting me. Take care.